came together as a group beginning of the year, and at that session they sort of talked about the mood that they were exploring and the sort of ideas that they wanted to look at in each of their works, and it became apparent that there are three very different approaches to this idea of an imagined republic, which was great, and I guess to be expected when you put three different writers and composers together. So my job as the director is to give the evening some kind of unity in 3 days.
And then I lay down on you because they made me this way. And every star in the heavens fell down on my eyes.
It's an experience that I enjoyed. But this is sort of even more interesting, just given the size of the choir and the type of choir, because it is actually a choir that's maybe a little more classically orientated.
So let's work on this forward resonance. There we go. 1, 2, 3. But that's terrific. We don't want it to na na na, but more na 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 na. Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
So by the third one, the choir should start coming in.
Yep.
So if that cue is okay. He hasn't, he's given me text, and I've basically, the narrated parts are the bits of Benny's written, the bits that are being sung are things that I've taken out of his text and chopped about and hopefully not corrupted the intent too much So.
What's his take generally on Presidentsland?
I think you'd have to ask him.
Are you filming? I think this is Ed's masterwork, and I'm really glad that I helped him do it. I mean, I only wrote the text, he did all the music, but I think this is some of his best stuff ever. I really do.
How about yours?
Oh, mine? They made it sound good. That's when you know you've got good musicians and good singers, when they make your work sound good. They made me sound like I knew what I was doing.
I'm a country that lost cities no more. I lost my Nina in the Third World War. She went to the front when I ran far away. There was a general caller, but I escaped the day.
It's the Presidentsland program. This is a commission from the Queensland Music Festival. Fantastic commission. It began for me with a phone call. Would I be interested in collaborating with a composer and doing a performance with the Southern Cross soloists? And as it so happens, they're old mates, and I've worked with them before. And they were no part of the commissioning thing, so they were as surprised as I was. So that was a great thing, because when you're working with somebody you really know and They're terrific musicians. It makes things so much easier to gel, to get it together. The composer they found for me, I mean, they were matching us. I also had met Eric Griswold, but I'd only met him a few times, and I'd heard some of his music as Clocked Out Duo, and I was very pleased with their choice, because he's young and it's sort of fiery and it's fun and it's energetic, and I said, I could easily work with Eric. I never have, but I know I could. And that's how it began. And then the commission said, well, look, we've got 3 couplings of writer and musician, one dealing with the past, one with the present, and one with the future, and you've scored the future. So your piece happens after Queensland becomes Presidentsland. And this was all kind of pretty easy going for me, because I wrote a book on the Republic called Abolish the States, and the whole Republican issue is a big thing in my life, and I think we should have it. So I was doubly pleased. And then thinking about what to do, because it has to be entertaining. I mean, I think the big thing is that we've got to see that we've got to engage the audience, and in this case, I want them amused as well. And then it was just a question of thinking, well, what could happen in the future that would surprise people and would sort of offer the composer the opportunity to show off the range of what he can do.
Here it is, the very moment. Where to begin a report on so momentous a change? The array of possibilities seems endless, but I've elected to start with perhaps the most vulnerable of the victims of management. Patients in hospital, and the hospital staff whose job it is to look after them.
You can just come in as soon as
Well, I think obviously they're all very experienced composers, with a great body of work already, behind them. And I think what's interesting is that each of their strengths has really come to the fore in each of the works. So Paul, whose background is jazz, and it's and Paul has a very particular style of composition and playing, and it's witty, it's funny, it's he's sort of taken, as is Don's, and it's difficult to talk about the music without referencing the each of the writers as well, because the composers have sort of they have obviously written the music born of the stories. So Paul's music is really it's punchy, it's cheeky, it's witty but in a very complex way, and it's an interesting counterpoint, because Don's story sort of has a very sort of he follows Banjo Patterson and a rhyming couplet form, which is really quite simple, and so it's an interesting sort of counterpoint to that.
And Don and I had been talking for years about doing something together. We had discussions some years ago about doing an opera based around the story of the dismissal of Gough Whitlam, which, for various reasons never came to fruition. But, this has been a great opportunity to work with a person who, most people would regard as one of our greatest writers. So Don certainly didn't disappoint. What he delivered was a fantastic kind of pastiche of a kind of bush ballad meets Edward Lear in a kind of a series of fantastic word plays which take in the whole state of Queensland, and it's very, very funny. Musically, I decided to follow my own instincts, and what I've written essentially is a piece of quite difficult contemporary music, but which uses the text always as its starting point. So it's full of very sophisticated word painting and an attempt to kind of create an oral soundscape around the words, using various aspects of contemporary music language to realise those, but also generically it goes in between jazz and references folk music and contemporary classical music, and stretches the instrumentalists to the limit in terms of what they have to deliver technically.
I've searched every beach from the Tweed to the tip of the mangrove twine cape. Every dune, every creek, every dismal and bleak clay pan and waterless lake. In the carbuncle moon I trudge through Yeppoon and on to a creek called Mistake. In the daylight and dark, every caravan park, every lean-to and campfire I'd rake.
Every day I've been looking for Ray, who disappeared from Caboolture one day.
I would say a good 9 months. Not constantly, certainly pretty constantly since I've joined. So it's a good 6 months' work for one night.
I know. I mean, it does seem a little crazy, but in terms, I think it's just the way that festivals really are, and it's a great, because it is this great one-off opportunity for so many people, particularly with this piece. There's a lot of people involved. And it's just such a great opportunity for that kind of collaborative spark to occur. And I think that's the point, rather than getting up some show that has another life. I think, it's that process that's just as important as the end result.
And certainly a focus for Queensland Music Festival in having as many people involved from the community as possible.
Yeah.